The Adirondacks lost a trans advocate and a wilderness leader last week. Forest Ranger Robbi Mecus was 52 years old. She died in a climbing accident in Alaska. As those she left behind tell the stories of what she meant to them, a picture emerges of a real Adirondack hero. That's today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Clarkson University, offering over 95 programs of study with campuses in the Hudson Valley, Central, and Northern New York. More at clarkson.edu.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Friday, May 3rd. First up, a court ruling this week paves the way for the use of an herbicide to fight an invasive species in Lake George. It's the latest development in a years-long dispute that's involved state agencies and environmental advocates. Lucy Grindon has the details.
Yesterday, a state appellate court ruled in favor of the Adirondack Park Agency in the legal battle over the proposed use of a chemical herbicide to fight Eurasian water milfoil. That's a type of aquatic weed that's been disrupting the lake's ecosystem for decades. Since the early 2000s, efforts to manage the species have cost more than $7 million. The Lake George Park Commission, a state agency, wants to use Procellacor to fight the milfoil. The EPA says the herbicide poses no risk to human health. But the Lake George Association, a nonprofit conservation organization, is against the use of the herbicide. They've raised concerns that it could harm native plants or lead to the growth of more algae. In 2022, the APA approved a permit for the Lake George Park Commission to use the herbicide to target 2 patches of milfoil. The Lake George Association then sued, arguing the APA should have held a public hearing first. Last year, a Warren County court sided with the Lake George Association, invalidating the permit. But yesterday, a panel of appellate judges overturned that lower court's decision. Their ruling should clear the way for the Park Commission to begin using the herbicide. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
Forest Ranger Robbi Mecus helped organize key events for the queer community, especially among climbers. And she was part of some of the biggest search and rescues in the Adirondack Park in the last decade. Emily Russell reports on the legacy that Robbi Mecus leaves behind.
Talk to anyone who worked with Forest Ranger Robbi Mecus, and they'll have an amazing story to share. Like how she found a frostbitten hiker this winter who was lost in the middle of a snowstorm. Or how she helped lead the search last fall for the young girl who was kidnapped near Saratoga. Or how she saved a neighborhood downstate from a wildfire years ago.
Robbi Mecus had reached a point in her career after 25 years where she was in the top tier of a small handful of rangers.
That's fellow Forest Ranger Rob Projacolo. He remembers a rescue in the High Peaks about a decade ago that Mecus played a key role in. The sun was setting. They were running out of time to be able to hoist an injured hiker out of the woods by helicopter. That's when Mecus tied a harness on the hiker in record time.
Had Robbi not been able to tie that hasty harness on the victim within about 90 seconds, we literally wouldn't have been able to do the hoist, and it would have been an all-night carry-out.
Projacolo describes Mecus as a rock star, one of the very best in wilderness search and rescue. But it wasn't always easy for Mecus. She was born in a boy's body, lived nearly all her life in that body. Projacolo breaks down when he remembers what it was like as Mecus struggled with her identity.
It was torture to watch her be tortured by it. And I give her so much credit for having the strength to do what she felt she needed to do.
I interviewed Mecus back in 2020. She knew she was trans from a young age, but said she didn't have any queer role models. She also worried that if she transitioned, she wouldn't be able to do the things that she loved.
There's many reasons why I didn't come out until I was 44. But one of them was because I didn't see anybody else doing the things that I still wanted to do, and I didn't think I could do them. I didn't see any queer rangers. I didn't see any trans climbers.
Mecus had to blaze that trail herself. She had to come out to her family, including her young daughter, as well as fellow forest rangers, police and fire chiefs, volunteer search and rescuers, people like Ron Conowitz.
Really didn't understand it, to be honest. Like, I didn't understand why someone would want to go and transition like that.
Conowitz says he understands now, and even then, it was easy to get behind Mecus. She was so good at her job, such a skilled climber, and really patient with people, always willing to talk to folks that didn't see eye to eye with her. Conowitz says Mecus accomplished so much.
You know, the fact that she was able to open up so many people's minds to the idea of a trans woman being a ranger and being law enforcement in the Adirondacks, which is pretty conservative. She gained so much respect from the hiking public and the climbing public.
Mecus was all about safety in the woods. She'd patrol Cascade Mountain, one of the busiest high peaks, and enforce snowshoe requirements. She'd also monitor hiking groups on social media, where folks ask about trail conditions and what gear they might need. She'd often chime in, really respectfully, and explain the rules of the Adirondack backcountry. She was also a key link between the rangers and the climbing community. Climbers have a long history of helping with some of the more technical rescues. And when Mecus came to the high peaks, Ron Conowitz says she upped the ante on that cohort of climbers.
She came in and wanted to bring all the volunteers back in again, and train. But before you could do that, you had to climb with Robbi.
Mecus was also a mentor to climbers in the queer community. She helped organize the annual Adirondack Queer Ice Fest and advocated on a broader level for LGBTQ rights. She helped organize Pride Fest in her hometown of Keene Valley.
For the queer community, for the trans community, she's the superhero.
That's Paige Humphrey. She says Mecus was a mentor to her. Humphrey met Mecus through climbing. Along with the Queer Ice Fest, Mecus would also organize smaller groups of queer climbers throughout the year. Humphrey says Mecus would set the route and make sure everyone was safe.
We got to climb Real Rock, and it was set up like a top rope. We were all, Robbi got it all done for us. We're climbing. Same with the ice climbing. She made us feel like we could do anything, because we can. Queer people can do anything.
And Mecus was an example of how queer people can be anything. They can be wildland firefighters, forest rangers, rock and ice climbers, and they can be beautiful, feminine people. Her good friend and fellow forest ranger, Allison Rooney, says that balance was an important part of Mecus's identity as a trans woman.
She was the person that wanted to be down in the dirt, getting muddy and fighting the fire with ash smeared across her face. But then she also wanted to go home and put on a cute dress and some heels and go dancing.
Mecus was so authentically herself. Rooney became a forest ranger because of Mecus, because of the example she set in what's long been a male-dominated field. Rooney remembers all the back and forth they had before she ultimately became a ranger a few years ago.
We would sit and have these late-night conversations about life and just what her job was like and how that would fit into my life.
Rooney says every day on the job, she thinks about the skills Mecus passed on to her. Mecus died less than a decade after she transitioned, but she used that time to the fullest, turning the biggest struggle of her life into something other people can strive for. Rooney says setting that positive example for other queer people, other outdoors women, that was a driving force in Mecus's life.
She realized that the role models she was looking for in the climbing community and beyond didn't exist for her, and she wanted to be that beacon for other people who were struggling in the same way.
Rooney says Mecus wouldn't want people to grieve her death too much. She'd want everyone to get out into the woods, go for a climb, have a drink around a campfire, all the things she really loved to do. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Saranac Lake.
We have more news all the time and through the weekend on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Evan Veenstra of Gananoque, Ontario, and Oscar Sarmiento of Potsdam. Have a great weekend. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.